Kahalal Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Waharakak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of GMS who rule well, who I learned this truth from, and salutations and blessings to you elect. Alright, this is Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and 8. I'll read in the NLT. It says, "Don't be surprised if you see a poor person being oppressed by the powerful, and if justice is being miscarried throughout the land. For every official is under orders from higher up, and matters of justice get lost in red tape and bureaucracy." So, pretty much the title of this lesson is Monopolizes Justice. Okay? In this society, laws and the concept of justice is monopolized. Okay, and we're going to give some examples and ideas, all right, where I ask Chat GPT certain things pertaining to scripture and pertaining to this current society. But in this society, you have something called red tape bureaucracy, as the scriptures in the NLT version just read, which pretty much goes into, these little these avenues you have to go down and pay certain people off, getting certain permits, licenses, administrative fees, processing fees, all this crap that you have, all these little hoops and all these little tricks you have to do just to get something rolling in this society, just to get some motion. It's a lot of BS, right? And that term red tape bureaucracy, you can go look it up what that fully means, right? But it pretty much goes back to the red ribbon or red seal on certain government letters or administrative letters from the king back in the medieval times. So that expression stuck to this day, right? But anyway, let's go. So I pretty much asked about justice being monopolized in the society. It says the idea that the state monopolizes justice comes from political theory, especially Max Weber's definition of the state. The entity that claims the monopoly of the legitimate use of physical force within a given territory. In the Bible's system, justice was partly decentralized, meaning that, for you to execute justice, you would have a lot of times 2-3 witnesses, as the scripture says, and then you would have judges, and the matter would be solved. Most likely, if all the evidence was there, this thing, you wouldn't have something called a preliminary hearing, and then you go, oh, okay, we need a court hearing. The court date is set from this day in 3 months, and all this, all these things, and then we're gonna get into it, right? It says families had an avenger of blood who could pursue a murderer, right? Which is true, and that's why you had something called the refuge cities as well, right? Like, for example, again, in this society, when you delete somebody, let's say you're fighting and you hit somebody, right? You guys are scrapping, you punch that person, and they fall and they hit their head and they perish. That's you might not get murder, right? Murder one, but you might get a manslaughter charge, right? Which is in the scriptures. And guess what? If you didn't have any malice towards that person and it was an accident, right? Like you didn't. It specifically mentioned in the scriptures, if you didn't pick up a weapon, a piece of wood, a piece of metal, and strike that person on the head, right? If it was even an accident, you pushed him, and then he fell, right? You can leave, and you would have to go to a refuge city, pretty much, right? And there would be an avenger looking for you, right? And you couldn't return, I believe, until the high priest died, right? But pretty much the people would have to take you in and hide you, and you were good. You wouldn't get a death sentence from the judges, but a family member, would be looking for you, right? They'd be looking for you, but again, things are different in this society. It says the community and leaders judged, but the victim's kin had a recognized role. Cities of refuge balance vengeance with mercy, protecting the manslayer from blood revenge until a fair hearing. In the modern nation state, no private vengeance is legal. If you delete the man who deleted your brother, you're guilty of murder yourself. Only the state, through police, courts, prisons, can use force or exact punishment. All crimes are officially framed as against the peace of the state, not just against the victim. That's why court cases are titled State vs. John Doe. Why this shift happened? To prevent blood feuds that destabilize society, which is BS. All right, these are, by the way, examples that they give, right, to try to humanize it and try to make it rational. But really, it's about money. All right, it's about money. It's about totalitarianism, pretty much. Okay. So it says, to centralize authority and taxation under monarchs, later republics, to create uniform law and order rather than clan-based justice. Consequences: loss of communal justice. Victims and families no longer control the process. Rise of incarceration, which is what? Business. Okay? Business, man. Right? Instead of banishment or restitution, prison became the state's main tool, which is, again, people get lost in the fact that, it's taxpayers' money that are keeping these people in, and it's costing us money, but it's making other people a lot of money. It's making certain people a lot of money. Okay? That is a business. It's a prison industrial complex. Revenue and power. Controlling justice became a means of consolidating state power, and in modern times, funding through fines, fees, and prison industries. So when you see manslaughter punished by jail in America, that is the direct fruit of state monopoly on justice. The state decides the penalty, manages the system, and reaps the benefits rather than families or communities. So here, more points. Regulation of disputes. In the past, disputes could be handled by arbitration, elders, or guilds. Today, even private, which guild is a brotherhood, today even private arbitration must be recognized by the state to be enforceable. Alternative justice is tolerated only under state oversight. Monopoly on execution of punishment, death penalty, imprisonment, fines, probation, all state controlled. Families cannot determine restitution or decide a penalty, even restitution payments. Fines, victim compensation funds are routed through state channels. Control over economic penalties, court fees, bail. That's a big one. That's a big business, right? You have I forget the word, but pretty much, obviously, you know how the bail system works. You're supposed to get the money back, but I believe there's states like here in Canada, you put 10% and you of the bail of the set bail. Like if it's 100,000, you need 10 grand. But in America, there's no restitution bail, I believe, right? It's just a business. That's why you have that bail bondsman system in the States. Okay. What's that thing? Bail bounty hunters, right? People get bounties on their head, for breaching parole or probation, and it says failure to pay can lead to extended sentences or new charges. Justice becomes a revenue stream. See? Licensing of justice actors, lawyers, judges, police, even private investigators must be licensed by the state, aka business. Right? Citizens cannot practice law for one another without state certification. This ensures the state filters who can represent or defend. Okay. Let me just skip down. Civil litigation gatekeeping. Lawsuits require filing fees, compliance with court rules, and access through licensed attorneys. The state decides which cases are frivolous and dismisses them. Even private wrongs like defamation, contract breach are reframed as court managed business. So you see the pattern. You see what's, policing and surveillance. Neighborhood watches or militias cannot legally enforce justice. Police carry the sole authority to stop, search, detain, and arrest. Surveillance technology. Wiretaps, drones, traffic cameras are legalized only under state warrant systems. Control over self-defense, stand your ground, and castle doctrines are tightly defined by statute, which here in Canada we don't have a castle law, right? Or stand your ground, pretty much. Okay. Right, victim disempowerment. Even if a victim forgives, the state may still prosecute. Example, assault or theft. And that's the thing, like if two men are fighting, that's supposed to be their business. And once upon a time it was. Okay, that's how people handle disputes. But now you punch someone in the face, even defending yourself, right? The police come up, they hem you up, they arrest you. You have an assault charge, they have various aggravated assault. Okay, you gotta hire a lawyer. That's all business. Okay, the state is getting involved in your business. It says the state prosecutes anyway. The harm is reframed as against the peace of the state, not just the victim, aka you owe us money. Okay, so it says federal versus state layers. Double jeopardy is barred within one sovereign, but a person can be tried by both federal and state courts for the same act. Example, civil rights violations after a state acquittal. This multiplies the monopoly. Different arms of the same government can pursue parallel justice. That's madness. That is fucking madness, man. Bottom line, America claims exclusive rights over who defines crime, who prosecutes, who punishes, who profits from the process. Okay, now I wanted to get this in the CSB version, the same scripture, Ecclesiastes 5 and 8. If you see oppression of the poor and perversion of justice and righteousness in the province, don't be astonished at the situation, because one official protects another official, and higher officials protect them. You got this guy, you got to grease his pockets. Okay, and then you have a person over them, and it's just one stream, right? But there's various levels. So just like what do you call it, with the mob, if you watch Sopranos, you see all the little tricks and the little red tape and paying off this guy, and all these little things that if you don't have connections, man, and you don't got the money, you're not going to get very far officially, right? With file this paper, wait 6 months here for this check, all this crap, right? So core themes across translation. Oppression is systemic. The poor and powerless are routinely exploited. Justice is perverted. Courts and rulers twist justice for gain. Hierarchy breeds corruption. Each official answers to someone above him, creating a chain of oversight that often results in protection of corruption rather than punishment, right? Don't be surprised. Solomon isn't excusing injustice, but warning us that power structures naturally tend toward abuse. See? And that's why all that business crap within the ministry, I'm talking about GMS, right? We're not a business. We're not, like these other camps. Okay? A lot of them are just businesses. All right? Whichever avenue they choose to get their income. And it's just guys trying to make more money, pretty much, and that's the motivator, okay? But the motivation here at GMS is We're just pushing this truth, man. You know, we're pushing this truth because we love this thing, right? It says bureaucratic layers, application to today. Bureaucratic layers, like red tape in the NLT, modern systems bury justice in paperwork, procedures, and endless chains of command. The more layers, the easier it is for responsibility to be diffused and corruption to hide. Hierarchies protect themselves. In corporations, politics, and courts, one official shields another. Police protect politicians, politicians protect financiers, and so on. Accountability is elusive. Miscarriage of justice, just as Solomon observed, rulings today are often swayed by wealth, influence, or lobbying rather than truth. And lobbying is huge in America, man. You have these lobbyist groups who influence the judicial system, making laws. You know? And that's a loophole. That's a thing that how these elites pass certain laws, okay, for their benefit and their enterprise. You know, it says miscarriage of justice, just as Solomon observed, rulings today are often swayed by wealth, influence, or lobbying rather than truth. Laws are written to serve elites while the poor struggle for basic rights. Normalization of corruption. Solomon, don't be surprised, applies corruption is not an anomaly but the expected fruit of fallen human systems. Okay. So here, modern parallels: court costs and fines. Justice is effectively for sale. Wealthy defendants can pay bail, hire top attorneys, right? People sometimes, you got, you're a high, how should I put it? You're upper echelon in society. Your rank is high. You might have a whole team of lawyers, okay? You hire a law firm and you might have 5-10 lawyers working on your case. Never mind just one expensive lawyer. It says, right, or drag out cases. Poor defendants sit in jail or accept plea deals, right? Which is no such thing as plea deals in the scriptures. It's cut and dry in the scriptures, man. The scriptures talk about perverting. Let's get right. Exodus 23:6. Thou shalt not wrest the judgment of thy poor in his cause. Keep thee far from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked. Right? Clear cut. Corporate settlements. Large companies pay fines as the cost of doing business, escaping deeper accountability. Justice becomes a financial transaction. Privatized prisons and probation systems profit from incarceration and supervision. More prisoners equals more revenue. Justice becomes a market commodity. Lobbying and legal loopholes. Those with money bend laws in their favor, ensuring favorable regulations and punishments. Okay? So, let me get this one. Hold on. It's a scripture in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 17:23. A wicked man taketh a gift out of the bosom to pervert the ways of justice. NLT says the wicked take secret bribes to pervert the course of justice. Right? And this man's system is all based on that. And it's done in such sneaky ways, as they say, the devil is in the details. All that paperwork, man. You know how much paperwork this devil has on all kinds of shit? Sign this page, this page, this page. You got all these signatures, all these fine little details. You're looking at what you're paying, and there's this fee, that fee. You just say, what the fuck is this fee? Madness, man. Anyway, that was pretty much it. Hope that was edifying. Call halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Shalom to the